32. So this thing, it doesn't auto-calibrate itself. So I done a switch. You can take the unit, the ESP32, you can put it on USB, have a software, like a standard software for calibration for these things. It runs like on every OS, like Linux and Windows. And then you send the raw data on the USB. It calibrates or it calculates out the errors for the magnetometers and the gyro zeros and things like that. And then you can hit send on this software, and then it sends the calibration data back to the ESP32, and then it's calibrated. Like the BNO 055, like which kind of it kind of shakes on the tractor and it loses its calibration. So that's a state you don't want in a tractor. Like the EMU can lose the calibration because it's not really optimal to calibrate it like on every boot up. So with this system, you can calibrate it you can calibrate it once. It gets saved in the flash, and then it takes the calibration out now. What you also have is down here, you can have mounting error correction. So if you put your EMU on a slated bonnet on the tractor, you can correct that. So the heading is always calculated with respect to even, like like 0 degree with wall and pitch, basic to the earth. So you can correct the mounting, like if you put your EMU 90 degrees turned or slanted down, things like that, it corrects it. Also, internal, I don't know if you know that, but the whole calculation of this EMU thing is done in quaternions. So it's really performant, and you can do such things like that, like correct it in all 3 dimensions for really cheap, so computationally. Then last we have the anti-rip GPS tab. You can have your anti-rip correction here. You put in your server credentials, your port, and it basically is an HTTP client. So it wasn't really complicated to implement that. Like I took the standard HTTP client thing, and I adjusted like 5 lines of code, and then I have my anti-rip client. So yeah, you can do your baud rate, it's normal. You can also do like sending back the position is configurable. Depends on your base station, and you can also do fixed position. You basically just copy your NMEA string here, and it gets sent with this in interval. And then you can select where to send the data. Like you can have UDP or you can have serial. So you can also connect this like with USB, and then it works too. Normally you have it on UDP, and it's light blue, so it's changeable on the go. It doesn't reset it. And then here, it's a nice feature. You have a TCP socket with a direct connection to the GPS receiver. So you can take your uSend software and configure it on the fly. So you basically drive with a tractor, and you can configure at the same times which AgOpenGPS runs, you can configure it with a TCP socket. Also, it works with third-party software. I have another for visual guidance on my Android tablet, and it works with this socket too. So it's basically just everything that comes from the GPS goes into the socket, and everything which comes from the socket goes into the GPS. So it's kind of cool. This thing now has like 66% of load. So there's a little bit of room to improve it. Yeah, I can show you the source code, but I think it's not so important how I implemented it. But what's important is, like you see it here, no connection. Yeah. If you leave the GUI too long open, it resets it. It crashes. So yeah, you have to configure it and close it, and that's the thing of the used libraries, and I can't use any other libraries because they're basically the standard libraries to use, and they're really performant, so I can't really change it. Yeah, that's one downside of it. But you have there your uptime counter, and you knew it if it crashes, then it's not actualized now or again. So yeah, that's my software I've done. I think it's kind of easy also from the end user view. Like you download one thing, we can even distribute the software in binary form. Like you only have to burn your ESP32. You don't have to configure it in source code. You don't have conditional compiling. It's basically one big binary blob you burn, and then you configure it in the browser, or even on the mobile phone. It scales, the screen scales with the size of the screen. So yeah, that's my software. That's the way I've come to AgOpenGPS, basically implementing this. And then there was the thing like I wasn't so happy with the PGNs. I tried to adjust the PGNs. So yeah. So yeah. Do you have any comments?
Oh, we can hear you fine. Wilbert, we can hear you fine, so just speak. It's just the video keeps cutting out.
No, with Jitsi you can have like a client inside the browser. So I basically just done another frame on my or what do you ask? Yeah. It's running on the ESP32, and it's the ESP makes logins to a Wi-Fi. And on my system, I normally have the hotspot on my mobile on, so it gets internet, and then it runs from this network. You can show it. You can do it in every browser you have, like Firefox, Chrome, even mobile browsers. So it doesn't run on external hardware, it's just ESP32.
Or I don't know if the question was if it needed to be run at the same time. No, it's just used for setting or configuring the ESP32. Once you have configured it, either by your mobile phone, some tablet, or the same computer, it's running AgOpenGPS, you usually don't need to open this web page. So it's only to configure it to support different hardware. If you have an IMU, or which kind of IMU, on which port you have your inputs and outputs. So you set up software once to work with your hardware, and once you're done, well, it should simply run once it gets power.
I have the software already running on a LOLIN module, LOLIN ESP32 module. The only thing that's a little bit of a hurdle for me right now is it's extremely modular, which is beautiful. But a little bit of hookup suggestions would be nice. Like I'm now eagerly waiting for Mr. Doppelgrau's PCB, because that's like a whole finished setup you can just play with, yeah. But if you were like to share a small sketch or something, like you would suggest how to actually hook up things, like it is super modular. But I think that's a little too much for a lot of users to actually go start building it. You know what I mean? Like just a very basic setup.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, it's basically software for me now, but and for you devs in our group, like Telegram group. But you can basically take the wiki content, liking up an ESP32, and that's it. You don't really have to have other instruction than that. You basically hook it up. And also, if you compile it for different modules, it's like the I2C or CAN bus things. It kind of takes the defaults. You can say it's defaults to something like the I2C pins. But yeah, I think too that's a wiki page to happen, I think, to hook it up correctly.
I would say one other idea is to allow either during compile time or some pre-configured default sets, something like the basic PCB. So you can select or upload some configured file or whatever. That's for the user. It's simple. If he activates this set of options, for example, it works with Brian's simple PCB. So I don't know what's easier to set up it at compile time or to set it up as different options but I think that might be a nice option to allow the users to select a few default configurations.
I think in the
yeah, and he's showing us that he has really, really nice weather outside, and I had a lot of rain today. I know that some people are happy with the rain, but well.
that have two using video and advanced for this. I think you can be. I can have two setups, basics setup with the like Brian's basic PCB and so I think you would want
Maybe just try without the video. It might improve the quality of your audio a lot. Let's go. Yep.
next try. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
A lot better.
So let's try again. A lot better. Yeah, okay, I think in the long run we would have two setups the very basic Arduino setup as Brian designed, and the advanced ESP setup for the developers or for the people who want to test other things. Another topic I want to touch is the EMU, or the alternative using two antennas, because I think the IMU topic in the heading is a very frustrating thing. So I'm gonna try to do it with the dual antenna system, like Andreas did it with the Trimble board all the time. Actually, I think we can get it to run. Actually, the problem is that AgOpenGPS doesn't process the MEA sentences fast enough, because there are 3 sentences at 10 Hertz, and the AgOpenGPS processes at 20 Hertz. So 2 sentences are enough. So three sentences is too much. I try to cope with this problem by adding a second scan for NEMEA line in the GOE designer code. I think it's getting better, but I'm not quite satisfied with it. Has anyone tried a dual antenna?
Matthias, sorry, as of now, I still haven't had the time. I'm really stunned by the work, because it's like, if I had known of this before, I wouldn't have even considered buying a B&O, because all it's giving me is headache actually at the moment. Yeah. So I think
so
actually this is the future, actually, because having this dual heading setup is a very neat solution to have an accurate heading. But I don't think that like computing and MEA HTTP messages would be necessary at all, because I think you're actually decreasing the accuracy. I think it'd be better if you could extract the information from uBlocks direct and try to get it into AgOpen another way. Like Andreas, I think, suggested to use different PGNs or something like this.
I did only get the question from Autosimber, what I think about it. And they only say thank you for my words. And maybe I will ask them this week what they are going to do with this information, or what they're trying to set up. I think also that they talk with Brian about this.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, good. I was going to email them and ask them. I mean, they said they were going to work on it and get it done. And when they had that working, they were just going to request a sentence that they could send to AgOpenGPS, just a single sentence with just the basic information, which would be perfect. But I haven't heard from them, and Andreas hasn't heard from them either, but I will email them and specifically ask them, where are you guys at on this? And then I'll post it on Combine Forum.
Yeah. Okay. I think they need a microcontroller like the ESP or something else to get out the information from the 2F9. And I did look a lot, and I think you need to use the UBX protocol, and you need to connect the two USB together to send the information, the LCM from one to another. I think it's not so simple to set up, but with good programming language knowledge, I think it's possible. Maybe we are faster.
And regarding heading, after all the problems with the BNO, with the new PCB, I'm trying a new IMU, the LSM9DS1 from ST Micro, which has basically the same kind of sensors, but not this fusion integrated, which had made the problems with the BNO. So, well, I hope it will work, and else it's a bit more expensive than the MMA. I think it's about €5 the chip instead of €2 and something. So I was thinking, well, it's worth the risk for the PCB now, but maybe it's helping for getting better heading too, because it has a 3D accelerometer, 3D gyroscope, and 3D magnetometer, and in theory, that should be good for getting a bit more stable heading. But as Brian has pointed out many times, in theory, many things sound very, very great. And if you put it on a tractor and shake it in every direction, sometimes the theory makes some sort of small cloud and says, well, no, I won't work today.
In my software, there's also a fusion because the other IMU combo I used, they hadn't any kind of fusion integrated. So the work for for the fusion, for the heading calculation and things like that is already implemented. So if the step from one IMU type to another is not so big, so I think it would be kind of easy to implement another chip. So that would be possible. And one of the things to in emus are mostly is the gyroscope, which has drift. And that's one of the big things for heading or also oscillation. Because if you do them together, like you have fusion, the gyroscope normally is accurate for big movements, but on small movements, like on if you're driving straight, it begins to drift. So that's one of the things the BNO isn't as great as it should be, because the gyroscope is really shitty. So it drifts in every direction, and you get like resolutions like 2 degrees. So plus minus. With the other IMU I used in my software, it's like accurate to like a quarter degree. So it's really accurate now, and it works. It just works without all the headaches. Like, yeah, you cycled your power, and then you have calibrated BNO again, and without calibration, it's more shitty, even more shitty than with calibration. So yeah, I think a different type of EMU is done for, because the BNO is also really expensive. Like 30 or 34 euros for a module, or no, or more, and it's just not worth the cost.
Yeah, I got on my phone and just using my phone, it seemed to work using the app, which is kind of nice because I can be anywhere then. One thing that keeps coming up in Combine Forum, and somebody says, well, I have this piece of code that doesn't work. And it's getting to the point where there's 87 different INO versions, and there's so many versions of boards and that sort of thing. Maybe a suggestion on how we kind of deal with that. Like we've got, we've got the ESP board, and then we've got Ropecope's design, and then there's the basic board and that sort of thing. And somebody says, well, I built the PC and I put an INO on it. That doesn't really help.
Which one?
So how do we, you want to inspire new designs and new boards, but then somebody asks a question, but you have no idea which one they're using. Any idea of the resolution on that?
I think for what I see is like there's so many people building different AgOpen rigs, and if you were to, I think it's like kind of an open source problem. You want to stay very open. Yet I think you have to make a clear suggestion, like something, do it like this. Like this is the thing that usually works.
Like the basic board. Like the basic board.
Like the basic board, or like the basic design. I'd be happy if it wasn't USB, but heard your statements before on that.
It's got USB too.
No, I think that's something like really stick with this. Like we have this software over here. I think you've heard it from Andreas. It's the Syria, and I think the main strength of this community is you have no options. You just have to buy this, and you don't have any options. Of course that's like terrible for an open source mind, yeah. But again, it's like also a little bit of strength because you know what you're talking about, like exactly what you mentioned. You don't know how to help these people because you don't know what they've built.
Yeah.
But I think it in the more or less long run, the problem will sort itself a bit out on its own, because we have the basic board. It's quite new, so I think many people have started before the basic board was available. And if my board design works and I get a good distributor, I have talked one of the last times with the problems of distributing PCB boards in Europe, but then we might have more or less two basic options that the people that don't want to develop many things will simply use, because they can have one and a really nice cooking recipe, by this, solder them together, it will work, or by this board and connect all your stuff, flash the software, and it probably will work. And of course, there will be always some users that have some weird use case where they say, well, this board is too small, too big, doesn't have not enough input, output, whatever. But I think in the long run, it will reduce a bit before than the basic board, and maybe my board, where most users that don't want to develop many things will stick to, because you will find more documentation. Currently, it's, well, the basic board is more or less in the state, at least from reading the forum, which, well, it should now work, but it's not yet so much promoted. I haven't read the wiki today, but I think it's not yet in the wiki as the default setup, so the people won't use that. But in the near future, I think when we put this in the wiki and something else, most people that only want to use it will go this way, because that's the way it's documented. So maybe that's another point for using the GitHub wiki for some developer information, and the other wiki for user information. We put in the user wiki only one or maybe two setups, and all the other stuff we hide where on GitHub. So a developer finds the information he needs, but the normal people are steered to some basic setup that should work. And if they are having problems, it's easier to help them because, oh, you're using that setup and not, oh, some Arduino board with something else and some, oh, you might be, it's a cheap China clone. So yeah, they're known to have some problems. And
yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of users are just simply, sorry, Wilbert. A lot of users are overwhelmed with the options at hand. Simply, I think that's what I see mostly in the community. Like when I get first questions, yeah, there's just a lot of options. Like just making a little road, not to do it the best way. And if they stick to the road, they can get support. It's as easy as this actually. Then you can support it actually.
Yes. Okay, I think that's the best way. As I started with teaching farmers to use in AgOpenGPS, I did show him all the information you can use, SiteRun board, you can this board, you can use this board. But at the end, I think it was the best to show only one board and show only one setup that works. So I think the suggestion of Doppelgrau is very great to have one or two basics setups that are in the wiki and everywhere you can see it, and or other somewhere in the GitHub.
If I could jump in quickly, I've been working with another fellow here in Alberta, and he's building an autonomous mower, and he's built the board. And when he was speaking with all PCB, the guys in China, they were saying that they can populate a board and they can not only make the PC board, but put all the components on it, and of course for a price. And it was going to be like a few $100 or $200, but to be able to have a place that you can order a board complete and all the parts soldered on, that's pretty nice. And they'll do it in China. And of course, you know, anything coming out of China, you can do anything you want because there are no rules, it seems. So it's an option kind of looking into for doing the basic board. Like if somebody, and the other thing, Keith is an interesting fellow because he comes from the power industry, and him and buddies, they race cars and they've built ECUs, like for the engine ECUs and race analog, like to log all the components of the cars. They've built all this stuff and they've been down these roads many times. And some of the suggestions he has is amazing. Like I said, he comes from the power generation side and PLCs and that sort of thing. So I'm just kind of picking up on some of his experience on what to do with some of these boards, like having a single connector coming off the board, not a bunch of terminal strips, that sort of thing, to redesign the board so that you plug one connector in, just like an ECU, and that's it. But again, these things take time, and I think we are all learning here, and this is a great learning experience. And again, I'm a farmer. I grow crops. I don't build ECUs for a living. And I would have loved to have been farther ahead and made more videos on how to make the board. But alas, the time ticks on faster than any of us can imagine. And the other thing I see AgOpenGPS, like you guys have said it well, there's too many versions. It's becoming the one thing that I hate about Linux is there's 87 versions of software, and it's great, but it's not great for somebody new to it who just wants to have an auto steer. So I think that's something we really need to focus on is get that the basic board and get it accessible so that people can just build it and they know how to build it and it's all in one place. So should it remain as a single GitHub? What's it called? Like a GitHub place, like with repository with the PC board, the INO, and the Gerber files.
I think to split it up and sit like with some modules. So you have your own admins for the different projects, like Coffee Truck is with the INO. So you just reference it, and he's basically his own administrator, and you don't have to check in every little thing he does and copy it, and then you lose information like who done what in which file. You normally use that information, and if you use some modules like references or for other projects, you don't lose that information too. And also with the release function, you always have like a version 1.25, and then it's defined. You have this version there.
Yeah.
So I think if we split it up, and if we make binary releases, I think it would be better to support the guys, because you can just say, yeah, update, and then we look again. Like basically every kind of support is done these days. Like, yeah, have you turned it on and off and on again, and have you updated it? Yeah. So we can do the same. And then we have a defined state for the software on the people's things.
But I would say from the user perspective, I would say we should put the basic and the INO together from the user's perspective, not from the technical background perspective. From the user perspective, I would say put the basic board with the working INO in the same. I don't care if it's the same repository or in the at least in the same release. So if he downloads it, he gets all the files he needs for getting a simple setup running.
Yep.
Okay, I have only one thing.
No, at the end.
Okay, only one thing. Christian has set up a Matterhost thing. It's like Slack.
I can show you the screen.
Yes, and I think it's time to move the development discussions to a place where the user don't hear it. So you can leave the discussion at the farming forum, at the forum for users, but developers should talk there. Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.